Welcome to Workbench. Before we kick off the panel, just wanted to give a bit of background on who and what we are. So we're an enterprise-focused VC fund, and we're building a home for enterprise software right here. Glad to host you all in our office. We have this floor and the floor below. And what we're doing is really trying to rethink the enterprise VC model. And we're connecting forward-thinking Fortune 1000 companies with leading enterprise startups. And here at Workbench, through our workspace, community, and executive briefings, our goal is really to be that bridge to facilitate those introductions between the two. And tonight on the panel, I'm really excited to call up Bill Murphy. He's CTO of Blackstone, head of Blackstone Innovations. And obviously, as you guys all see in the news every single day when you open the paper or look online, security is just top of mind for everyone. And there's just so much noise out there, it's challenging to figure out what's important and what are people doing. So what's great about Bill is, we'll get into it, is he's got great insights into trends, into what Blackstone's doing, and also we'll get into what he sees for the future. So without further ado, welcome.
All right, I hope I can deliver on your expectations here. But welcome everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. So to kick off, just share your background a little bit.
Sure. You know, my background. I've been at Blackstone for about 4 years. As John said, I run technology internally to Blackstone. We also do some investing, which actually dovetails a lot with the Workbench model in terms of corporate VC done. We think corporate VC done right, where we're heavily involved in strategic investments, and we've done 6 of them in security, and probably a 7th next week. So it's a space we feel passionately about, and think it's the right place to invest at this time. Although it is crowded at this point.
Yep. So let's kick off with a fun one. All this increased focus on security, is that a blessing or a curse for someone like you?
Well, I think, generally the fact that we have to worry so much about security is a curse, right? Like, I mean, you know, it would be great if we lived in a trusting society and everybody could go home and leave their door open, because we wouldn't have to spend the time opening the door. So it's kind of a tax on mankind or whatever, but it is what it is. So I would say, I always look at it that way, because I think it's better to be spending time trying to create value for your customers than it is to try to secure things. But you got to pay your taxes, and security is a version of that. So in terms of a blessing from a perception perspective, I do think that the world has woken up, and that's a blessing. Our board of directors has got very distinguished board of directors with tons of experience, but certainly none dealing with cyber attacks, and they're as interested about cyber security as anything else, as a topic that we need to be on top of. So I think it's stressful, confusing at times, and something we have to be on top of, but also raises the profile of what we're trying to accomplish and the value it adds to the business.
And are you finding then that the board is coming at you just with a ton of questions, some that make sense and some that don't?
Yeah, I think that everybody's in varying degrees of education on this, but also in the same spot about trying to find the sweet spot between how much can we spend and where do we spend it in a way that maximally protects us. Because I think that there's this huge trend that everybody realizes generally you can't 100% count on protecting everything. So you need to assume that people are going to get in. You need to be able to respond. You need to have intelligence about why people would be attacking you. And it's much more multifaceted than it used to be, because it used to just be, build taller walls as fast as you can. So I think they're asking questions, and they're more open to that viewpoint. Because before, I think it very much was like a litmus test, are we secure or are we not? Can someone please tell me? And anybody who says yes or no to that question, I guess if you say no, you might be just very self-aware. But if you say yes to that question, you're probably overconfident and ripe for a problem. So it's always an answer of, well, we think we're doing what we need to be doing in order to protect with the resources we've chosen to dedicate to this, and everybody's being much more understanding of that fact, or at least the forward thinkers are, I think.
And digging deeper on that in terms of the trend change, how do you spend your time and resources on protection versus remediation these days?
So protection versus remediation, I think I think you can still be efficient if you choose next generation type technologies across both of those things. But I think before it used to be 90% protection and like 10% everything else. And now we're probably at 50 to 60% protection, 30% response, and then 20% intelligence. And governance, maybe that would be.
Is the whole pie growing when you're saying that, or is it getting just split differently?
It's growing. We probably spend 7.5% of the tech budget at Blackstone, which is maybe the only way to really classify, because it's like apples and oranges. People are always like, how much percent of revenue of the company? And it just varies widely with the type of business that you're in and the margins that you have and so on. So 7% of our tech budget, that's growing. It's probably be closer to like 8 or 9 next year, because we just feel like the risk continues to escalate, so we need to spend more time and energy protecting against it. Unfortunately, I wish we could spend less.
And looking forward then, I mean, our budget's always going to have to increase in perpetuity, or will we ever reach a place where existing tools can do that protection kind of as a baseline and focus on the remediation as well?
Well, I hope so. And a lot of that comes down to the products that are built. We've invested in 6 cybersecurity companies that we think are next gen, that are helping protect better, respond better, make people more intelligent. And then the one that I see on the horizon that I think is, and this is the trend that is newest, is massive talent shortage in security, right? I think everybody's aware of that. That's not going away anytime soon. I think we're so far from replacement cost, like from having the right amount of talented security engineers in the country, that we have to look for software solutions, not just to prevent or to enable them to respond, but also to enable them to respond more effectively, or enable them to prevent with less management, right? Because a lot of firms, and I hope we're an exception to this, because we've really worked hard to do that, but I see a lot of firms buy a lot of solutions, but they don't have the talented people to implement them in the way that they need to implement them in order to get the value that is promised by firm by product X, Y, or Z. And then there's all these different products. So now you buy 400 different products. How do you stitch them all together? And even if you have a decent sized team, you often run into problems just products talking to each other and other things. So we think there'll be a lot of innovation coming in workflow automation and other types of kind of stitching the security ecosystem together in a way that is, helps people scale better.
And so in terms of the automation, is that going to be around making sure that you're upgrading in time, that you have the right patches, or is it something else?
No, this is more like, I was speaking more in terms of like making security professionals more efficient. So, so you get a FireEye alert, right? And you have to look into it. Or somebody gets a spam message and they want to know if it's a phishing attack. Right now, in most places, that's an email to the security team. The security team has to spend time. It might take them 30 seconds. It might take them 15 minutes. But there's lots of those every day, right? So so now they determine the FireEye alert is really malicious. Okay, so now they have to have a choice of like 1, 2, 3, 10 things that they need to do. It's not easy to do those 10 things. So they need you need like the security version of the easy button, kind of to at least okay, block this, right?
But how much of that is going to be unique to each organization in terms of the magnitude and threat levels?
Yeah, I think it will be, but there'll be enough. There's room for innovation. I mean, I hope people solve it perfectly so that we don't have to, you'd like to be able to put it on autopilot. It won't be able to be like that probably, but you'll be able to put some things on autopilot, and tying them all together will add so much value just in presenting the information. So it'll get to the point where, remember how before, like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, it was like enterprise software was like, you looked at it and it was just crap. The UI was terrible, right? And then I'd say 7 or 8 years ago, the best enterprise software vendors started to realize that UI is really important, right? And so now, and you see like Workday and Salesforce, and not that that's best example, but of everybody's focused on UI and trying to figure out how to make things better in enterprise software. I think security is just like lagging a little bit in that, where they were focused on functionality and completeness of blocking. So now you'll start to see security firms really focused on their user experience, because that's what helps people scale. And that's a trend that we're looking forward to as customers, and we're trying to. Because of the other reason that we invested in some companies out of our private equity funds as well that deal in security services and other things, because the number of companies that are taking security seriously is still probably like a small fraction of those that should be. And so there's like this huge pie of increasing demand, and it'll have to be solved with a variety of ways: more services, better products, and more automation for the staff.
And as more startups are starting to creep up every single day tackling security challenges, how do you kind of find the needle in the haystack and figure out what's interesting to you guys?
Yeah, that's the hardest problem. I think that and I still think, and this is true not just in security startups, but in all of them, the lack of solution selling, where people are highlighting a problem in your own organization and bringing you a solution to that, versus just telling you about their great thing that they've created. Like there's so much
whiz-bang technology.
Right, there's so much pride of ownership for entrepreneurs, and I was at Capital IQ. I was one of the founding team there, and I was there for 11 years, so kind of saw that company grow. And as we learned, trial and error, how to sell appropriately, we learned that people didn't really care what our solution was. They didn't care the great thing that we just created. They cared if it could solve their problem, right? And I don't think enough people know about or think that way about selling. They come in and they're like, I really want to tell you about, spam, malware, deletion, or whatever, and they never even bother to ask you if that's a problem or something you need to solve, and then and then you hang up, and then they call again, and then you hang up, and then it's enormously time-consuming to route even the traffic of the new technology. So any way to kind of create some clarity through the noise, I think, would be my number one request as we get approached all the time. Is like, how do you truly tell a story where you're like, I can prove an ROI very, very quickly? Because when people come to me and say, Bill, I've looked at your organization, I know you have this problem, and I know I can deliver this ROI for you in this time frame. Would you like to engage further? It's like a breath of fresh air, rather than me having to make those connections myself, which is often like too tiring or impossible given the lack of information, and therefore you wind up not even exploring it because they don't tee it up that way. So
playing off that, it seems like you're talking about the business side of the technology versus just the tech itself. For startups in the audience, what tips do you have for them to be able to approach you and understand what your pain points could be?
Yeah, I would say don't talk about your technology at all first. Like, we don't care, right? I mean, we care about the problems that are critical to our business, and the more you can engage in a dialogue around, now obviously you're going to steer the dialogue to something, to your area of solution, right? So I'm not, I'm not looking for free management consulting or anything, but I think that taking that approach where you're not immediately trying to sell something is the best advice, and really understand if it's an issue. And even if it's not an issue, cutting it short and saying, okay, thank you for the information about Blackstone, I'll come back to you if I have something that can help you, great, is a much better way to engage than to like constantly try to jam the square peg into the round hole, which I get all the time. And time is the most critical commodity we have, and so we have to guard it pretty greatly.
Think about all the pitches that you've gotten over the last few months. What would you say is the most overhyped trend right now?
Oh, okay. We did not rehearse these questions before. I hope you guys realize that. So, overhyped trend. I think that I think mobile, a bunch of the stuff on mobile is a little bit overhyped. Maybe that's just our business. We're not as in need of that type of, applications and sandboxing and so on. I do think that the response side of the game is still underhyped, and the problem with all the protection stuff is because it's hard, so there's the Internet of Things on Android protection, and then there's mobile iOS protection, and then there's PC protection, and then there's Mac, and there's so many different things that every firm is trying to solve one of those problems, and they really ought to be kind of a feature in a broader suite. And eventually that usually happens in the security marketplace, whereas there's this massive innovation, and then there's consolidation, and then innovation and consolidation. So we're probably in this innovation part of that wave for the most part, although we're starting to see some more consolidation. So that's the trend that's most frustrating, is all the point solutions and just trying to assess where to go next.
So we've talked about your responsibility, the security analyst. What about the end user? What role did they play in all this?
Yeah, that is, we're spending a ton of time now. So, our security program, when I've been there 4 years, so we kind of, we rebooted a little bit when we got there as we normally do with new people, and had to take a fresh look at everything. And when we did, we said, okay, first thing, you got to make sure you have baseline protection, right? So, you're never going to protect 100%, but you got to get as close as you think is absolutely possible, right? So we felt like that was, first and foremost, you got to solve that. And then it's like pouring the foundation for a house before you put up the walls, right? And then after that, we focused on, okay, making sure we understood what's on every endpoint, and how can we use that data to most effectively respond? So we focused on response. Then we were like, okay, well, who's attacking us and why? Let's get intelligence about those things. And then fourth, which is kind of the phase we're in right now, is how do we now try to limit the threats through user intelligence and security awareness, and just, there's still the weakest link of every corporation is the users themselves, right? They click on things. I don't know why everyone has this incessant need to click on everything, but it is, I'm sure everybody's laughing because it's true. They tend to click on emails that and everybody I've ever talked to, every corporation has the same issue. So it's how do you educate them? And you'll never drain the swamp to never have anybody click on something or do something that they shouldn't. But if you can get down to a manageable amount, then your security team can respond appropriately if anything does pop up that's a potential. So that's what we're always trying to, just how do we help them help us have less to do.
And do you find that with the education and just people being a little bit more tech savvy these days, that over time we'll be at a point where not everyone's clicking on the free money link to Prince from Nigeria or something?
From your lips to God's ears. Anybody who has any unique ways to make sure everybody is motivated to do that, I am all ears. I mean, I think it's just the same problem that everybody has, and no one solved it because it's truly a behavioral issue, right? It is, and when people, and you can't always be the bad guy with security either, right? So you want to create culture that's open and gives people freedom to do their jobs and creates the type of organizations that we all want to work in, where you're not in a jail or something, right? So you're always playing with that line of where's too much freedom and too little security, or vice versa, and that. I don't know. It's just because it's so human. There's not a technology that's going to solve that problem. It's very much like blood, sweat, and tears, person by person training and such. So, but if somebody has the greatest technology ever that does that, I'm welcome to invest in you.
There you go. And so that's the accidental side of user behavior. What about some insider threat where someone's either been hacked or there's just malicious intent? What do you think about user behavior analytics?
Yeah, so we invested in a company at Red Owl Analytics that specializes in this, and we feel strongly that it's the right thing. So essentially, what Red Owl does is correlates all the internal communication and tries to find trends of, Jonathan used to respond to his email within 20 minutes, and now he never looks at it, and he's coming into the office at 3 a.m. and logging in at weird times and not getting back to people. That's weird. He must be disgruntled, or something else must be wrong. And then how does that impact your risk profile of Jonathan, whereas before you would have viewed him in one way? So I think that's a very unique way to kind of help target where to focus the energies, and we're in the middle of rolling that out, and hopefully that'll have a a positive impact on Blackstone, and we think it's we invest in the company because we think it's the right type of approach, versus the alternative is just lock everything down and make it hard, and we don't want to do that for cultural reasons and entrepreneurial reasons and otherwise. So we've tried to take the policing version instead of the dictatorship version, I guess.
And does it ever get big brothery where people don't want to be tracked?
I've been, we take really good care of, the people who have access to the information are very small, like extremely small. But I've also, I think everybody has the general belief that they're being watched if they're on the corporate stuff. So, and I think that's fair, right? I mean, it's corporate assets, it's corporate, and you come in and you work for somebody and it's fair. And I think that, obviously we're not intruding into people's personal lives or doing anything like that. It's just, but if you're writing corporate email, that's fair game. I think by almost every corporation's, code of conduct or whatever. So I don't think we're any different than anyone. But we try to take very, very great care as to limit it and handle it well and handle it only in the instances where we absolutely do, so that it's not an issue. It's also slightly different in financial services, I think, because a number of the regulations require you to do communications compliance checks. So we've been doing email compliance checks for 10 years or whenever it started. I don't even where, but so it's already something that was done. So this was just actually targeting the checks better rather than instituting them. So it might also just be a factor of our industry versus others.
Sure. And one more question that I want to leave time for a couple audience questions. Do you find yourself collaborating with peers at other large corporations more over the last year?
Over the last year, I don't know, but I feel like we've been collaborating a lot. So, this is a place where we all benefit, and there's no reason not to. And we want to enable, any groups that can enable that are, I think, advantageous. However, they have to be, they got to really add value. It's the whole time to value ratio again, right? So I think a lot of people want to create collaboration, but then they go to the least common denominator, and then you get collaboration for the people who don't really understand it, right? And then, so it's about trying to find the right places to collaborate such that it adds the value, as you get up the stack with your own maturity as a corporation. So I think it's a place where we should be collaborating, and I know the government is working on, bills to enable. There were a number of bills. I'm not sure if they passed. I'm not an expert in the regulation part of this, but to try to enable more information sharing under kind of a safe harbor of that information, and I think that's all positive. It's probably long overdue, but we need that because and the government's kind of in a unique spot to help it as kind of a true third party, just for the best interest of everybody. So it would be great if they could do that effectively.
Cool. So we have a few minutes. Any audience questions?
Do you have any interest in investing in immersive technologies that may apply to training, as you mentioned, the user problem for education? And secondly, do you have an interest in terms of global rapprochement and harmonization of standards and sort of in terms of global collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, I think that listen, the more of the people who are on the good side of the fence, collaborating in order to protect those of us who aren't, attacking is a positive. So I think we would, we do have relationships around the globe with countries and regulatory bodies and stuff. So 100%, I think that would be a great thing. Oftentimes, though, I mean, you don't want to also have too many cooks in the kitchen where you can't push it forward. It's probably better to have, fast-moving regulation in more places, or fast-moving, positive change in more places than a slow-moving global change that everybody has to agree to. So I'd say it's measured maybe. And then in terms of training, I think, I think any new training technology is a great thing to try and figure out how to. Changing user behavior, whether it's security, enterprise software, consumer software. That's what made Apple so, amazing for everybody, right? Is like they kind of cracked the code on changing user behavior and, doing it more emphatically than anybody had. And that, the more we can figure out new ways to do that, and whether immersive is the way, I don't know, but I think that like every one of us in my position are open to looking at new ways to help people use technology more effectively, because what we're doing now, it probably hasn't even really evolved that much. It's like we got the cheat sheets and we got the PDFs, and then you got the trainer, the video, and then maybe people don't watch the video that much, and then the trainer has to come by, and it's probably the same thing we all did, 20 years ago, so I think the world's ready for something better, but I don't know what that is yet. There we go. All right. I had a feeling you had a reason for that question.
Time for one last question.
Or if you can name a few vendors that that they're doing good in the cyberspace security. Can you just name them?
Oh, in terms of who we've invested in Eyesight Partners, Cylance, 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 Bit9, Carbon Black, which is another endpoint company. Red Owl, which I talked about, and we're going to have another one, which I don't want to announce yet. And then Watchdocs, which we sold, which is a document security company. I do think, actually, one thing just to add is, like you said, one of the, what's the most overhyped thing? Encryption is the most overhyped thing.
How come?
Everybody's like, oh, it's encrypted. And it's like this magical word that makes every executive in the world think that you're safe because it's encrypted, right? So I would say, it's, obviously it's always good to have certain things encrypted and as much as you can that doesn't hurt performance and all that stuff. So it's a good another layer, but like people are so excited to try to find the magic answer.
It's not the be all end all.
Right, exactly. So I think that's one that's a little bit overhyped.
Let's give Bill a round of applause.